The breaking point. The air inside the Sovereign Council chamber tasted like recycled fear. Kara Chen stood before the semicircle of alien dignitaries, her hands clasped behind her back to hide their trembling. Above her, the vaulted ceiling stretched into darkness, and the faces of 7 council members glowed with the cold light of their data screens. She had been summoned here to answer for her refusal. 3 weeks ago, Kara had declined to install the neural compliance chips into the life support systems of the human colony ships. The chips were mandatory, the council said. They ensured cooperation. They maintained order across the 17 species that comprised the Galactic Alliance. Kara called them slave collars. The Vreth ambassador spoke first, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. His translator chip rendered his clicking speech into flat, emotionless words. Engineer Chen. You have violated Sovereign Mandate 773. All human vessels must include approved control systems. Your refusal endangers the stability of this council. Kara lifted her chin. She was 34 years old, born on Mars, trained on Europa, and she had spent the last decade building the engines that powered half the Alliance fleet. She knew her worth. She also knew that humans had been second-class citizens in this alliance since the day Earth had been welcomed into the fold. Ambassador, Kara said carefully, the systems you're asking me to install would give your government remote access to our ship's oxygen supplies. That's not a safety feature. That's a kill switch. A ripple of movement passed through the council members. The Torvan representative, a creature that looked like an upright salamander wrapped in ceremonial robes, leaned forward. You question our intentions. I question any system that treats my people like criminals who need to be controlled. The chamber fell silent. Kara could hear the hum of the environmental processors, the distant clang of metal on metal from the shipyards beyond the station walls. She thought of her sister back on Earth, of the colony ships waiting in orbit around Luna, of the thousands of humans who had trusted her to build them a future among the stars. The Vreth ambassador's voice turned cold. Humanity was granted membership in this council as an act of generosity. Your species contributes labor and raw materials. You are useful. But you are not indispensable. Kara felt the words like a slap. She had heard variations of this speech before, whispered in hallways, implied in contract negotiations, buried in the subtext of every trade agreement Earth had signed. Humans were the newcomers, the primitives, the species that had barely crawled out of their own solar system before the Council found them. But Kara had also seen the Council's ships. She had torn apart their engines and studied their designs. She knew that beneath all the posturing and superiority, the Council needed human engineers. They needed human metallurgists and fabricators and miners. The galaxy ran on resources the Council no longer wanted to extract themselves. Then I suppose, Kara said quietly, you'll have to find someone else to build your ships. The silence that followed was absolute. The Torvan representative rose from his seat, his robes billowing. You refuse? I refuse. You understand the consequences? Kara nodded. She understood perfectly. Refusing a council mandate meant sanctions. It meant trade embargoes, travel restrictions, possibly even military intervention. Earth's economy depended on galactic trade. Her refusal could cost billions of lives their livelihoods. But Kara also understood something else. She understood that if humanity bent the knee now, if they allowed these chips to be installed, they would never stand up again. Every generation that followed would grow up wearing invisible chains, never knowing what freedom felt like. I understand, Kara said. And my answer is still no. The Vreth ambassador's eyes narrowed. Very well. This council will convene to discuss appropriate measures. You are dismissed, Engineer Chen. We suggest you use the time to reconsider your position. Kara turned and walked toward the chamber exit. Her footsteps echoed on the polished stone floor. She could feel the weight of 7 alien gazes on her back, could sense the anger and disbelief radiating from the council members. When the doors sealed behind her, Kara allowed herself one long, shaking breath. Then she pulled out her personal communicator and sent a single encrypted message to the human delegation on Earth. It's done. They know we won't comply. Prepare for retaliation. Kara made her way through the station corridors, past the viewports that showed the endless black of space and the distant glow of stars. Other humans passed her, technicians and dock workers and merchants, all of them wearing the quiet exhaustion of people who had spent too long bowing to masters who would never see them as equals. She wondered how many of them would support her decision. How many would curse her name when the sanctions came down, when the food shipments stopped, when the council made an example of Earth. But as Kara reached the docking bay where her shuttle waited, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Because for the first time since humanity had joined this alliance, someone had said no. Someone had drawn a line and refused to cross it. And if Kara Chen could stand before the most powerful government in the galaxy and refuse their demands, maybe others could too. Maybe humanity was stronger than anyone realized. Maybe it was time the galaxy learned what humans were really capable of when they stopped asking for permission. The ripple effect. The message spread across human space like wildfire through dry timber. Kara Chen had expected silence, perhaps even condemnation. Instead, within 48 hours of her refusal, every major human colony had received the recording of her confrontation with the Sovereign Council. Someone on the station had leaked it, transmitted it through a dozen encrypted channels until it reached Earth, Mars, Europa, Titan, and the scattered settlements beyond. Kara watched the recording herself, sitting in her cramped quarters aboard the orbital station. She barely recognized the woman on the screen, standing alone before those alien faces, her voice steady as she spoke the words that had changed everything. And my answer is still no. Her communicator hadn't stopped buzzing since. Messages from her sister, from former colleagues, from people she had never met. Some called her a hero. Others called her a fool who had just sentenced humanity to economic collapse. But all of them had heard her words, and something had shifted in the collective consciousness of her species. On Earth, the protest started first. Governor Yuki Tanaka stood on the balcony of the Earth Authority headquarters in Geneva, watching the crowds gather in the plaza below. 50,000 people, maybe more, carrying signs and chanting slogans that would have been unthinkable a week ago. No more chains. Human dignity, not human labor. Kara was right. Yuki's chief of staff appeared beside her, tablet in hand, his face pale. Governor, the Vreth embassy is demanding we issue a formal apology. They want Kara Chen arrested and extradited. They're threatening to cut off all antimatter shipments if we don't comply within 72 hours. Yuki didn't look away from the crowd. She was 61 years old, a career diplomat who had spent 3 decades navigating the impossible politics of keeping Earth fed and functional while dancing to the Council's tune. She had signed treaties that made her sick to her stomach. She had smiled and bowed to ambassadors who treated her like a servant. She was tired of bowing. Tell the Vreth embassy, Yuki said quietly, that Engineer Chen acted as a private citizen expressing legitimate safety concerns. Tell them Earth does not arrest people for refusing to install devices that could be used to murder civilians. And tell them that if they want an apology, they can wait until hell freezes over. Her chief of staff stared at her. Governor, they'll impose sanctions. The antimatter shipments alone are irreplaceable, I know. Yuki turned to face him. But do you know what else is irreplaceable? Our dignity. Our right to say no when someone asks us to put a gun to our own heads. Kara Chen just reminded us that we have that right. I'm not going to throw her to the wolves for using it. Within the hour, Earth Authority released an official statement supporting Kara's decision. Mars followed 6 hours later. Europa, always cautious, waited a full day before their colonial assembly voted to back Earth's position. The Council's response was swift and brutal. Trade routes closed. Antimatter shipments stopped. Galactic credit exchanges froze human accounts. The 17 species of the Sovereign Council moved in lockstep, presenting a united front against humanity's defiance. But something unexpected happened. On the mining colony of Ceres, human workers stopped reporting to their shifts. Not in protest, exactly. They simply didn't show up. When the Torven mine supervisors demanded explanations, the workers shrugged and said they were sick. All 9,000 of them. On Ganymede, the water processing plants that supplied the Council's military stations experienced mysterious technical failures. Human technicians apologized profusely but explained that repairs would take weeks, maybe months. The specifications were complex. The parts were hard to find. They would do their best, of course. Across the outer colonies, human cargo pilots discovered sudden and inexplicable problems with their navigation systems. Ships that had been scheduled to deliver raw materials to Council worlds found themselves lost, delayed, or forced to return to port for emergency maintenance. Kara watched it all unfold from her quarters, barely believing what she was seeing. She had expected retaliation. She had prepared herself for arrest, for economic warfare, for humanity to pay the price of her defiance. She hadn't expected her species to fight back. Her communicator chimed. Kara glanced at the screen and felt her heart skip. The message was from Admiral Rebecca Okonkwo, commander of Earth's small but growing defense fleet. Chen. Get to Docking Bay 7. We're evacuating you before the Council decides to do something stupid. You've got 20 minutes. Kara grabbed her emergency pack and ran. The corridors of the station were nearly empty. Most of the human personnel had already been recalled to Earth or reassigned to colony stations. Kara passed a Vreth security team, but they ignored her. Either they hadn't received orders to detain her, or they had decided she wasn't worth the diplomatic incident. Docking Bay 7 was a flurry of activity. A sleek Earth Authority corvette sat in the launch cradle, its engines already humming with pre-flight power. Admiral Okonkwo stood at the base of the boarding ramp, a tall woman with silver hair and the kind of presence that made junior officers stand straighter. Chen, the Admiral said as Kara approached. You've caused quite a stir. I didn't mean to start a rebellion, ma'am. Okonkwo smiled, a sharp expression that didn't reach her eyes. Yes, you did. Maybe not consciously, but you knew what you were doing when you stood in front of that council. You reminded us that we don't have to take their shit anymore. Kara felt a weight settle in her chest. They're going to make us pay for this. Oh, absolutely. The Admiral gestured toward the ship. That's why you're coming with me. We're relocating you to a secure facility on Luna. The Council wants your head on a platter, and I'd prefer to keep it attached to your shoulders. As they boarded the Corvette, Kara looked back at the station one last time. Somewhere in those metal corridors, the Sovereign Council was meeting, debating, planning their next move. They would try to crush this uprising, to remind humanity of its place in the galactic hierarchy. But as the Corvette's engines roared to life and the ship pulled away from the station, Kara felt that spark of hope burning brighter. Because humanity had finally stopped asking for permission. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans decided to forge their own path. The silent preparation. The Council chamber on Sovereign Prime was built to inspire awe and submission. Its walls were carved from a single asteroid, polished to mirror smoothness, reflecting the faces of the 17 species that ruled known space. Today, those reflections showed worry. Ambassador Threll of the Vreth delegation slammed 3 of his 4 hands on the podium. 11%. In 2 weeks, human labor output has dropped by 11% across all Council operations. Our military stations are rationing water. Our mining operations are behind schedule. Our cargo routes are in chaos. The Torven High Overseer, Magistrate Kelvin, rippled his throat sac in frustration. The humans claim technical difficulties. Illness. Equipment failures. Coincidences. There are no coincidences, Threll hissed. This is coordinated resistance. They're making fools of us. Across the chamber, Ambassador Uric of the Honnen Collective leaned back in his suspension field. The Honnen were energy beings, barely corporeal, and Uric's voice echoed from speakers embedded in the walls. Perhaps we pushed too hard. The compliance chips were always going to be a difficult sell to a species as proud as humanity. Proud? Threll's eyes blazed. They're primitives who discovered faster-than-light travel by accident. They should be grateful we allow them into civilized space at all. And yet, Uric said softly, civilized space is currently experiencing severe supply disruptions because those primitives have decided to withdraw their cooperation. Perhaps gratitude is not the foundation we assumed it was. Magistrate Kelvin interrupted before the argument could escalate. The question is not how we got here. The question is what we do next. The humans have rejected our authority. If we allow this to stand, other species will follow. The Decari are already making noise about renegotiating their labor contracts. The Scythian miners are demanding better working conditions. This rebellion must be crushed before it spreads. The chamber fell silent. Every council member understood what Kelvin was proposing. Military action. A demonstration of force to remind humanity and every other client species that defiance had consequences. We should target a small colony, Threll said, his voice cold and calculated. Nothing major. A mining outpost or agricultural settlement. We destroy it, blame the attack on their own negligence, and humanity gets the message. They either comply or they suffer. Uric's voice carried a note of warning. You're proposing genocide as a negotiating tactic. I'm proposing we maintain order. One colony, Uric. 50,000 lives to save billions from chaos. It's a bargain. The vote was called. 14 members voted in favor. 2 abstained. 1 voted against. The council had made its decision. On Luna, deep beneath the gray dust and ancient craters, Kara-Chen stood in a bunker that didn't officially exist. Admiral Okonkwo had brought her here 3 days ago, to a facility buried so deep that even the council's scanners couldn't detect it. The walls were lined with equipment that hummed with quiet power, and the air smelled of ozone and coffee. Around a holographic display table, 12 people stood watching the tactical readout of human space. Military commanders, colonial governors, industrial leaders. People who had spent the last 2 weeks coordinating humanity's quiet withdrawal from the galactic economy. Governor Tanaka spoke first. Our intelligence sources confirm the council is planning a retaliatory strike. They haven't chosen a target yet, but it's coming. We have maybe 72 hours. Let them come, said General Marcus Shaw, commander of Mars Defense Forces. He was a broad-shouldered man with scars on his hands from his years as a combat engineer. We've been preparing for this since the day we joined their damned alliance. Kara blinked. Preparing? For how long? Admiral Okonkwo turned to her. 20 years, Chen. From the moment the council made first contact, some of us knew this day would come. We've been building, stockpiling, training. Not enough to conquer the galaxy, but enough to make sure nobody conquers us. The holographic display shifted, showing hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, weapons platforms disguised as mining equipment, defense satellites that had been labeled as communication relays. Kara stared at the scope of it, feeling dizzy. All this time, she whispered. You've been preparing for war. We've been preparing for independence, Tanaka corrected. There's a difference. We didn't want this fight, Kara. But we weren't going to let them put chains on us either. Your refusal just moved up our timetable. General Shaw pulled up another display. The council thinks we're soft. They think 30 years of playing nice means we've forgotten how to fight. They're about to learn why humans are the only species that conquered their entire homeworld before they learned to be civilized. The plan unfolded before Kara's eyes. Defensive positions. Evacuation protocols. Strike packages designed not to conquer but to inflict enough pain that the council would think twice before pressing an attack. It was brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. "What do you need from me?" Kara asked. Okonkwo smiled. "Keep doing what you do best. Build things. We're going to need every engineer we have." On the agricultural colony of New Hebrides, farmer David Mutual watched his children play in the fields of engineered wheat that fed 3 council worlds. His wife, Amara, stood beside him, her hand in his. "The news feeds are saying the council might attack," Amara said quietly. "They're saying we should evacuate." David squeezed her hand. "Where would we go? This is our home." "But the children will grow up free or not at all." David's voice was firm. "I'm not raising them to bow to masters, Amara. I'm not teaching them that dignity is negotiable. If the council comes, we'll face them. Together." Amara looked at her husband, at the determination in his eyes, and slowly nodded. Around them, across New Hebrides and 100 other human colonies, similar conversations were taking place. People making choices, drawing lines, deciding what they were willing to die for. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Most species joined the council gradually, their resistance worn down over generations. They adapted, compromised, found ways to survive in the shadow of greater powers. But humans were different. Humans had spent their entire history fighting, against nature, against each other, against every force that told them they couldn't achieve the impossible. They had clawed their way out of caves and built civilizations. They had split the atom and reached for the stars. And they had done it all without asking permission. In her quarters on the Luna facility, Kara couldn't sleep. She sat at her desk, stylus in hand, sketching engine designs and weapon modifications and 100 other improvements that might give humanity an edge in the coming fight. Her communicator chimed. A message from her sister on Earth. "Kara, I saw your speech. I'm scared. But I'm also proud. Whatever happens, I want you to know that. I'm proud of you." Kara felt tears sting her eyes. She typed a response, deleted it, typed another. Finally, she settled on the truth. "I'm scared too. But we're human. Being scared has never stopped us before." She sent the message and returned to her designs, working through the night while the galaxy held its breath. The council was coming. And humanity was ready.